Chapter 21 Gun Theory. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Welcome. Welcome. Welcome, the teacher greeted all of us with a smile, and we were directed to sit in the center of the room. Soon, all of my classmates had arrived, but this class had the least amount of all of my classes for some reason. The others had 50 to 70 while this one only had about 20. Welcome. I'm glad you all signed up for this class, and let's just jump right into it. Select the gun you would like to practice with, and we'll be disassembling it. Oh, no introduction or anything. I already like this class. Mississippi. What should we call you? One of my classmates shouted as a rack of guns appeared from the ground. Part of the dirt arena opened up, allowing the white rack to come through. Just call me Mr. G, he says before gesturing for us to pick our guns. Ednel.co. Everybody charged towards the rack, but I sat back, watching what everybody was going to pick. I could possibly determine their personalities and fighting styles just from their guns, so I don't have to run into annoying people like the red-haired bitch from before. Most people picked an assault rifle while the remaining picked pistols, shotguns, and snipers. I carefully watched the sniper users, as that was the gun I was going to pick. Right now, I was clearly not ready for close combat with a shotgun or pistol. An assault rifle could have been better for me, but I'd rather sit in the back, picking monsters, or people off. It would also be harder to plan with the constant loud gunfire. So if I picked an AR, my one good piece of me, my intelligence would have been stripped. I was the last one to pick my gun, and I chose a long and skinny white sniper with a suppressor on the end. Alright. Shall we begin our training? He asks as soon as I inspected it a bit, looking for any faults in the gun. I wasn't an expert on it, but I wanted to make sure it could at least work. Okay, the order that you all will line up in front of me with is pistols, then AR, then shotguns, then snipers, Mr. G says. We all follow his directions and line up with our respected group. There were 4 snipers, including me, which made it a total of 5. Okay, now, the first person in line, step up to the table. All of a sudden, 4 white tables rose up from the dirt in front of each person in line. All of us were a bit surprised, but eventually, the people in front stepped up to the table and placed their guns on it. The teacher then began to instruct how to take a part of each gun and assemble it when needed, but he also added a comment to the sniper rifle group. This is just for practice, but you won't be disassembling your rifle or assembling it ever. Unless there are certain circumstances. He says, and I quickly took note of it. Mr. G. You said, unless there are certain circumstances, so what are those certain circumstances? I'm just a bit curious, the boy in front of me asks. Well, if you ever get the chance to infiltrate the enemy's base, you can disassemble the rifles, which are a pain to put back together. We all took a mental note. The rest of the class proceeded smoothly, but we never got to use the guns once. It was mainly covering how to hold the gun, keep it safe, store it, and disassemble it. But towards the end of the class, he edged us with the topic of tomorrow. The bell is about to ring, but I'll tell you that tomorrow, we'll cover how to use your guns in synergy with your close combat weapons. Of course, that is for everybody but the assault rifle group and shotgun group, he says, and just as we were about to ask more questions, the bell rang. This is fun. I made me towards the library as I wanted to take a break from fighting in the dungeon. I wanted to study up a bit more on the red-haired girl's family, so the library was the perfect place for some peace and quiet. I heard you were tardy to your first period, the librarian says. It was the same grandma as always. How did you know? I ask as I sit down at one of the tables which had a few computers on it. I'm the one who oversees the attendance of every student in this school, and you were the only one who dared to be tardy on their first day of school, she chuckles to herself. It wasn't intentional. I had stuff to do, I replied before switching on the computer. ****. And what was this? Stuff. Stuff. The librarian clicks her tongue before returning to working on her computer. After another few hours, the sun had set, and my brain was completely fried. I should probably slow it down on the dungeons, I muttered before making my way to the cafeteria as I was not only exhausted but starving. Once I arrived, I ordered my food and sat down at a table with Finder, who this time kept an eye out for the red-haired girl. Oh yeah, I didn't even try to figure out her name. I muttered, leaving Finder with a dead-panned expression. Seriously? Nah, I know it, what a liar. Her name is Bella. Pretty easy to remember, right? Yeah, but her squid-like face is even easier to remember. We both chuckled to ourselves before bursting laughing with each insult we flung at her. Eventually, we attracted so much attention that Bella, the red-haired girl, came running up to us with a balled fist cocked behind her head. Whoosh! But just before she could punch me, Finder swiped up his hand, creating a blast of gray wind to send her flying back. I wiped the tears of laughter from my eye before glancing back at Bella, who was fuming in rage. Oh, you're right, she is built like a toothbrush. Finder tried to keep his serious facade, but couldn't help but snicker at my comment before elbowing me in the stomach. What the hell, I say, holding my side, and he just gestured with his eyes. I glanced back at Bella, who the headmaster of the academy restrained. The fragile old man grabbed her wrist, which had conjured a fireball, but even when she threw her arm, her shoulder just dislocated as the headmaster continued to smile, creepily. If you want to challenge somebody, please do it in the VR ring, he says before letting go of her arm, snapping her shoulder back into place, and leaving the cafeteria. So that is the headmaster. Finder POV, you'll regret not taking my side. Bella shouts before storming off. I sighed before sitting right back next to Orion, who was unfazed as always. Dude, she's going to make a move soon. I can't protect you from the law, especially when the ones controlling the law are the big families, I inform him, but his strangely calm expression didn't change. Well, maybe it changed a little, as I saw a smile slowly creep onto his expression but was quickly suppressed not long after. It's fine. He mutters. This guy is insane. My father told me to never fuck with guys like this, but I hated that red-haired bitch anyway, so I hope whatever he does, completely crushes her. Chapter 22 The Short-Awaited Court Session, 1, You are listening at novelfull.audio. This guy is insane. My father told me to never fuck with guys like this, but I hated that red-haired bitch anyway, so I hope whatever he does, completely crushes her. Orion POV, just before I went back to my dorm, I visited the library once again to ask the librarian for a favor. Do you think I can see the contract that my parental guardian signed? Sure, but what do you need it for? Oh, he wanted to review some of the terms because I got us in trouble, and the opposing family is about to take us to court, so. Psi star. I guess, in just a few minutes, the contract had been printed, and Granny gave me some kind words as I left. I hope you're not a slave of some household by the next time I see you. Sure, I then made my way down the hallway, towards the headmaster's office. The next day, in first period, somebody came to get me, and everybody already knew what was about to happen. I don't know who you offended, but you should probably just accept all their terms so your punishment won't be as bad. The person who had picked me up was my gun theory teacher. Orion, I'm worried for you here. You're a smart kid from what I've seen on your entrance exams, so don't ruin your life just because of this one slip-up. What is the level of court she's taking me to? I ask, ignoring my teacher's advice. Psi star. It's the highest possible level her family can control. So, do you think the judge is biased? Never, which is good, because he'll probably try and give you the lightest punishment possible. Which still probably won't be as good, but you don't have to worry about the family persuading the judge. He is absolute neutrality, I see. That's good, I mutter before grabbing the handles of my backpack. This is going to be fun. Order in the court. Order in the court. The judge shouts, whacking the gavel against the small wooden plate. Bam bam bam, and with that, everybody shut up. And the trial began. It was a pretty small court, but I could already tell the people on the sidelines were very important due to the number of guards surrounding them. I was at my station, and Bella was at her station, with somebody who I assumed to be her guardian. Uncle. Maybe father. But somebody who actually caught my eye was the headmaster of the school I attended, sitting near the front of the, Miss Wonny, you may state your reason for being here. Yes, I was harassed by this boy here, and he refuses to apologize to me. I even have proof from some of the security cameras that were around. Suddenly, on the screen behind the judge, a video of when she dragged me away and backed me up into a wall was played, but our positions were switched. I glanced at the headmaster, who slightly glared at Bella. She's too arrogant. She thinks she can get her way. And what do you have to say for that, Mr. Orion? The judge asks me, and I give my honest answer. What a load of bullshit. The air in the room got heavier, and Bella was even a bit surprised at my response, as she probably thought she intimidated me enough. Because that is not possible. There is no way she was able to get access to the security cameras, and I believe the headmaster here can confirm. I saw Bella visibility gulp a large drop of saliva, but upon seeing the headmaster unfazed, she regained her confidence. This is so funny to watch. So, Miss Wonny, we have taken the video in secret to confirm its authenticity and have found out that it is forged, but it was taken from a security camera. Oh, I didn't even notice there was a security camera there. What, how dare you? She cries out, but the judge calmly glares at her, no fucks given. Damn, I muttered. If you give me him, my family will shower you with riches. She immediately lost her cool instead of trying to come up with an excuse, a reaction fitting for a child. Quiet. He shouts, shutting her up, but her anger wasn't quelled in the slightest. She literally looked as if she was about to explode. Your Honor, may I add something? Go ahead. Suddenly, I opened the file that I had brought with me and revealed a single piece of paper. This is the contract that my parental guardian had to sign, and on one of the terms provided by the headmaster, it says, I quote, all students within the vicinity of the school campus are deemed equal. The influence of families will not be used here. Plus, if you would like to check after this trial, the headmaster even said that we are equal while in school, I explained. Your Honor, are you seriously going to believe this rampant child? He clearly forged that document. Look at how messy the signature is. The man standing next to Bella speaks up for the first time. And Bella looked at him as if he was a beaming light of hope before smiling with an evil expression towards me. As the headmaster is here, why don't we have him check the authenticity, the judge says while gesturing for the esteemed headmaster to come up to me. As you wish, the headmaster says before jogging up to my station, but doesn't even glance at the paper. With all due respect, sir, but shouldn't you check this arrogant boy's paper? The man standing beside Bella says, with the most urging yet polite attitude I'd ever heard. Sir Wonny, but do you take me for an idiot? Are you intentionally slandering my handwriting? The headmaster asks. But sir, please check. That handwriting is clearly off. Mr. Orion here has already confirmed the signature is mine the day before. I can even bring up the real security camera footage as proof. The headmaster glares at the man. With all due respect. Quiet. The judge shouts, and this time the man was fuming in anger while Bella's face had paled in fear. You know what, play the footage, the headmaster says. The footage played. The room was silent. And the Wonny family was defeated. Now that is all the proof we need. The sentence for. Your Honor, I'm not finished, I interrupt the judge. Everybody was shocked by my interruption, but I was about to get to the juicy part. What is it, Mr. Orion? I haven't finished what I was saying, the headmaster next to me glared, but I ignored him and did the same with everybody else in the room. Please continue. The judge was a bit displeased with my attitude, but I won't be able to pull off my next move with no confidence. I believe the Wani family should be punished harder due to them breaking the contract with the school by using the headmaster to gain footage and manipulate it. Also, I believe I should receive some sort of compensation for all the stress I've been under. Are you joking with me, Mr. Orion? The judge asks. Does it look like I'm joking? Chapter 23 The short-awaited court session. 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Are you joking with me, Mr. Orion? The judge asks. Does it look like I'm joking? The room went silent, and the air seemed to grow 10 times thicker than before. Your Honor, may I speak? The headmaster beside me asks. If it is something to your defense, then go ahead, but anything else, please wait until we settle this, thank you. First of all, I never collaborated with the Wani family. Okay. Well, we can't believe you yet. And anyway, let's go back to what Mr. Orion just said. Go ahead, the headmaster says. First of all, I was already going to add an extra punishment on top due to them breaking the contract and even manipulating the school. But, what makes you think you deserve some form of compensation? The judge asked, and everybody else in the room roared in agreement. Yeah. What is this kid talking about? Get him out of here, Doviko, he's just a kid. Get him out of here. Order. 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 Everybody shut up upon hearing the gavel slam against the wooden piece on the judge's stand. Go ahead, Mr. Orion. Please elaborate. I'm sure you've already figured out that I'm an orphan by the way you refer to me as my first name, so you should know that I have absolutely no family backing me. And I was pressured and intimidated by one of the largest families in the city. So, of course, I was extremely stressed and couldn't focus on much. So I would like some compensation, I explain, and the judge squints at me. How old are you, Mr. Orion? 14 years old. Very impressive. But, that is not enough for you to be compensated. If they physically harmed you, I might have the Wani family grant you some compensation, finally. Bella Wani POV, very impressive. But, that is not enough for you to be compensated. If they physically harmed you, I might have the Wani family grant you some compensation. I smiled upon hearing the judge's words and glanced at Orion, who was unfazed as always. This idiot was so arrogant as to think he could actually gain something from this. He's going to die anyway after this. Sure. I'll show you some physical harm, he says, and even though I was sure I left no bodily harm on him, he lifted up his shirt, revealing large bandages wrapped around his torso. He then began to unravel them, revealing a deep wound that was still healing. What the hell, I muttered, and my father glanced back at me, glaring intently. This guy is completely crazy. Did he do that to himself? My body shrunk back in fear as he looked as if he was about to burst out in anger. He was biting his lip, causing a bit of blood to draw, and the veins on his neck were straining as if they were about to implode. Oh gosh, how cruel, how could somebody let their kid do that? I wonder what's going to happen next. Damn it. Is us losing face and doubling our punishment not enough? How much more do you want? Well, it seems you will be rewarded with compensation, Mr. Orion. And I hereby declare this court session done. Any member of the Wani family will be unable to attend any school in Amlas for 1 year. And they will give Mr. Orion a large monetary compensate. I don't want some bullshit money, Orion speaks up once again, leaving everybody speechless, once again. Excuse me, Mr. Orion, please watch your language, okay? But let me pick my compensation since I was the victim, ****. The judge looked a bit stressed as he was under the pressure of the public eye. And even though he never takes a knee for any big family, when it comes to fair decisions and the public eye, he always has to make the best decision, otherwise, the case might escalate to something much bigger. I grant you permission to pick your compensation, but if it is something unacceptable and too much, I will have to decline. So please think of your compensation over the next few days, and I will be sure you get it. Nah, I have it right now. I want access to the higher levels in the school library." Everybody went silent. "Was this your goal all along, young man?" The judge asks as he glances towards the headmaster, who just nods his head in agreement. "This has to be a joke." "Right, this has to be a joke." Orion just shrugs before saying, "So, can I get my reward now, please?" The headmaster has already agreed, so I'm sure he will let you access the higher levels in the library and make to read until your heart is content. And with that, the judge announced our punishments and announced the compensation, which we thankfully didn't have to give, but the humiliation was too much. We were a sideshow in his plan to gain the next level of the library without taking the test. I suddenly began to think back to when we first met. Was it all planned from the start? Is that why he was researching my family? Did he play along just so he could have this? Did he even care about my attempts, and only saw me as a tool? It was too humiliating to show my face in public, so I pulled my hoodie over my face as my dad dragged me out of the courtroom. Slap! I was slapped across the cheek, and my dad raised his fist to punch me out of anger but quickly stopped himself. "What the hell are you doing?" he shouts, lowering his fist. I just wanted." "Fuck. You can have anything you want, but just think before you act. I can't believe you even hurt him to that extent. What am I supposed to tell the other family members as well? Do you think I can just tell them that their children can't go to school for the next year because of your mistake? I'm going to get battered and scolded. You might even get kicked from the family." But I just wanted him to be. Ugh. Get out of my sight. Get out. He shouts one last time before I run down the hallway, and just as I was about to go through the exit, I saw him. "Orion. Please forgive me," I begged as I needed him to change his decision desperately. "And why should I do that?" he responds, his eyes colder than ice. Because will give you an even greater compensation. If this continues, my life will be ruined. Do you think I give a shit about your life?" My face paled upon hearing his words. Please, I'll do anything." I beg, but this time getting on my knees with ugly tears flowing from my face. "Anything." Why? Yes, just please change the judge's mind." He pauses for a bit, and I see a ray of hope shine down. "Then. How about you become my maid?" he suggests, the headmaster behind him looking at me with eyes full of pity. He's clearly mocking me. Shit. Fine. I'll be your maid, I say, hanging my head in defeat. Just kidding. I glance up to see him crouching down to my face level. Oh shit. This is bad. I can't hold in my smile, he mutters, trying to suppress a psychotic smile that seemingly tried to desperately claw its way onto his face. I can't. He's too scary. I can't beat him. Chapter 24 Spear Theory 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I crouched down, so my eyes met her eyes at the same level while she lifted her head up, glancing at me. Oh shit. This is bad. I can't hold in my smile, I muttered, covering my mouth with one of my hands, but she was still able to see my eyes. Her reaction was a bit disappointing, but as I regained my composure and stood up, I left the courtroom, heading back to school as I still had class. The headmaster was going to grant me my pass tomorrow, so now I had to focus on this damned quest, and school, of course. Quest. Complete your first dungeon. Description. You have rested and learned long enough. Deep within you, you yearn for the battlefield. You want to feel the sensation of your blade slashing through flesh. The sensation of warm, fresh blood splattering across your face. Reward. Tattered magic ring. Penalty upon failure. Death. Time left. 33 hours remaining. I'll use the breaks in between classes to farm up some more XP. I might as well take advantage of all the time it gave me. Ugh, as I made my way down the streets of Amlas, I took a sharp turn into an alleyway where I placed my hands against the wall. Huff 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 huff. Ah. I made the wound too deep. Huff huff. The wound I had inflicted on myself with a small dagger went as deep as I intentionally wanted it to, but I never got medical attention to enhance my poor orphan image, even though I wasn't poor. I need to get myself back to the school. Going to a hospital will just get me killed by the Wunny family. I need to get back quick, I muttered before taking in a deep breath and continuing my way towards the school. Thankfully, I soon arrived back at school as the courtroom wasn't that far, and as soon as I arrived back on campus, I noticed it was the break between first and second period. What? He's actually back. Where's Bella? Wasn't he supposed to be dead or thrown in jail? Rumors had spread amongst the campus as soon as I stepped foot onto the neatly paved white path. But, I didn't have time to be distracted as I walked as quickly as possible to the infirmary, where I was greeted by a grandma who seemed to be knocking on death's door. She wasn't like the librarian but an average human who probably hadn't focused much on the system as she hadn't maintained any of her youth. Mana can retain youth and increase lifespans, but the process is risky and is very rarely used, if not at all in some places. Miss, I'm injured a bit, I say as soon as I enter the room. Okay, please lay on the bed there. I'll be right with you, she says with a sweet and comforting tone as if angels were singing in place of her voice. I nodded before laying down on the bed, backside down, and taking off my shirt. The bandages were already thrown away as I took them off in the courtroom, so as soon as the nurse came to check on me, she was shocked by the large laceration across my chest. Oh my lord. You said you were injured a bit. She gasped. I guess, well, this doesn't look like a bit, she says before opening a plastic case and taking out a needle, thread, and some disinfectant spray. The process of stitching was quite painful, but the most painful part was when she lightly sprayed the disinfectant on the wound. It burned like crazy as if my entire chest was on fire. Oh, it might be a bit infected. Do you have a pharmacy? She asks before finally closing the wound, and a light green glow envelopes chest. It came from the hand, which was stitching my chest back together. Yes, do I need some meds? Yeah, just tell me the address and your name, and they should have it ready by the time school is over. But for now, I want you to rest here because it seems you've also caused quite the commotion, she says with a warm smile. Sure. I reply before laying back on the hospital bed and setting my backpack to the side. The nurse didn't let me leave the room until the bell signaling the transition period to second period rang. Ding dong, okay, see ya, and thank you very much, I waved goodbye before dashing down the hallway. The spear theory room was on the very other side of the school, and there were about 6 minutes for the transition period, so I had to be fast. Also, the nurse did an incredible job as I could barely feel the wound anymore, no matter what I did with my body. I received tons of stares, and the gossip continued, but some of them brought me into a brighter light this time. Welcome, oh, and welcome back, Orion. I'm glad to see you're here on time, huff huff huff. Thanks, I muttered, grabbing the paper he was handing out to everybody as we all entered the classroom. Bella wasn't here, of course, but her friends she was hanging out with yesterday kept talking about me towards the corner of the room. So childish. I could only roll my eyes as I didn't even do it to get on the good side of everybody in my school. I guess it was just another bonus, but I never really thought of it. Okay, now that everybody is here, please quiet down. Our teacher, who we call Mr. Lask, shouts, garnering the attention of everybody. We all quickly shut our mouths before a white rack appeared at the very end of the classroom. Please select another spear. It doesn't matter if it is the one used yesterday or a new one, I didn't sit back and wait this time as I already knew everybody was using a spear. Spears are a tricky weapon to learn as you either need to have an incredible defense or speed in order to land hits without the risk of dying. But, if you do manage to master it, you can keep your enemies at a safe distance while increasingly doing tons of damage. To be honest, a shield isn't necessary. In fact, it even hinders your skill, but as most of my opponents overwhelmed me with their strength, I was forced to learn how to use a shield with my spear. But this feels nice, I muttered before placing the spear in the middle of my palm and letting it bend side to side. It was made quite well. Not too stiff and not too flexible while also being made of such a sturdy material. Okay, now can somebody please teach Orion the basics we covered yesterday? Also, please make it quick, otherwise, he's just going to be behind the entire semester, Mr. Lask asks the class. Chapter 25 Spear Theory, 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Not too stiff and not too flexible while also being made of such a sturdy material. Okay, now can somebody please teach Orion the basics we covered yesterday? Also, please make it quick, otherwise, he's just going to be behind the entire semester, Mr. Lask asks the class. A few people volunteered, but none of them were selected. Instead, a human boy with short black hair and pale white skin was chosen. He was a bit more muscular than me but also a bit taller. Yo, what's up, he says, walking over to me with an unreadable expression. Yo, we have an awkward fist bump before we go into the corner of the room, and he begins to describe the basics of the spear quite well. Yeah, so just hold it wherever feels comfortable. The teacher said to hold it in the middle, but that's honestly not that optimized because if you want to do a double-handed stab, you have to shift your hands down. Plus, you lose some range of motion, right? Yeah, he responds with a smirk. What? Seems I don't need to teach you much if you already know that. Cool, let's go back then. He stared at me just as I was about to walk back. I kind of like you, so let me give you a tip with this teacher. Don't take everything he says to heart because some of the information he hands out is meant to limit you. This is so he can find talents that manage to break through that limit. The boy explains. I see. Can he do that? I mean, I guess. He's doing it right now, isn't he? I guess, I replied before we made our way back to the group, surprising the teacher as it hadn't even been a minute. Sai, did he already learn everything? Mr. Lask asks. Yep. He's good to go, the boy, whose name was Sai, says and gives him a thumbs up of confirmation. That's great, now let's actually do some physical learning, he says before twirling his spear above his head and then slamming it on the ground. Please don't do that. It probably doesn't matter now, but doing that back in my past life would sometimes cause the spear to crack. And the amount of times I've seen it happen just pisses me off. The lesson continued, but I never noticed any limits in his wording, which either meant, Sai was trying to get another meaning across, he's lying to make a fool of me, or he just wants to slow my progress by having me be wary of every single detail said. Okay, swing. 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 The teacher chanted as we had a dual grip on the spear and swung down continuously. My body wasn't used to my previously refined movements, so I could feel my stamina draining at an insane speed. Eventually, I could barely feel my arms, but thankfully, we earned a break. Huff 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 huff, my breathing was so heavy that I could see a slight light blue tint glossing over my vision. Damn. I should tone it down a bit. You have some talent with the spear. I think you might be even better than me. Sai comes up to me and sits down next to me on the bleachers. Jeez. I trained for like 4 goddamn years in a hellish environment, and this kid is just as good as me. Damn. Also, I'm gonna tone it down on such refined swings. My body isn't ready to handle it. I then took another sip of water from the plastic cup I was holding as Sai stared at me. That's bad, you know. You should give 100% of your effort, even if it is in training. So he's one of those guys. A genius that trains hard. Such a cheat. Anyway, I heard you had some conflict with the Wani family. You sure do have some balls to fuck with them, Sai chuckled before handing me his cup of water as I ran out. I glanced down at the cup before going in for a sip, but I also stuck my nose just a bit further in to smell if there was any poison. The Wani family could have sent him, but from what I could tell, he wasn't trying to drug me. Which family are you from? I ask before chugging the entire cup. I'm not from a rich family. I'm just your every other day civilian. Oh, I thought everybody here came from a big family. Pfft. He tried to hold in his laugh for some reason before snickering while covering his mouth with his hand and turning his face to the side. There's no way that would happen. Well, maybe if it was 20 years ago, but now the conflict between the large families is so overwhelming, that sending all of their kids to a school like this is just begging for terrible consequences. He didn't need to say any more as I immediately understood what he was trying to get across. I had also seen a few articles on this. So, an inevitable civil war is brewing, right? Yep, and I'm fucking leaving the city before I get drafted, he smirks. I think I might do the same, I muttered. The class quickly resumed, and the teacher continued to not drop any misleading information. But now that I had an idea of Sai's personality, I knew that the teacher wasn't dropping any misleading information because we were at the very basics right now. He won't be able to progress much if he ruins the very foundation. Ding dong, okay, make sure to get the paper signed soon, otherwise, you won't be able to participate in the dungeon trips. The teacher shouts as we all leave the classroom. Today, I was going to clear a dungeon, but first, I had to visit the library. Oh shit, you aren't a slave, the librarian says with a cheeky grin. Were you hoping I would become one? Kinda, tch. Anyway, I get to enter the next level of the library tomorrow. I grinned back at her, but she just rolled her eyes as she didn't believe my words. Yeah, right. How about you go fight a dragon in the meantime? Oh, how much do you want to bet then? On if you can enter the next level. She confirms. Yep, how about $5, only $5. I only have a 5 on me, well, whatever. Prepare to be shocked. Now, I don't want to exhaust myself anymore, so I'll finish the dungeon right now. Chapter 26 Near-Death Experience 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Well, whatever. Prepare to be shocked. Now, I don't want to exhaust myself anymore, so I'll finish the dungeon right now. I have much more time left on the clock, but if I train in the dungeon again, I'll be too sore to even complete a real one. After scouring the internet for a bit, I found a D.rank dungeon that could actually be completed. The way dungeons work is, for example, an E.rank dungeon such as the Crystal Tortoise's Sanctuary, cannot be completed as there is supposedly no boss, which I later found out wasn't true, but that's beside the point. And then there are D.rank and above, which can be completed and, upon completion, reset, allowing new adventurers to raid the dungeon again. Okay. This one doesn't look that bad, I muttered as I glossed over the article on a dungeon called the Toxic Slime Swamp. It was apparently one of the easiest D.rank dungeons you can find near Amlas, so I, of course, selected it after visiting a shop as I needed to come prepared. Do you have anything that can help negate toxic attacks? I ask one of the store employees. Oh, are you challenging the Toxic Slime Swamp? He responds. Yes. Is there a problem? Oh, no, it's just that there are different levels of toxic-resistant gear. So, some are more expensive than others, then please lead me to the cheaper gear. This gear isn't cheap. Is this the cheapest you have? I ask, and the employee nods. They're not as cheap as some other magical equipment though, as processing the mold into the items is very taxing. I can see. Geez. I guess I'll get some of the accessories since I can actually afford them. Okay, thank you, I thank the employee before he walks away to help another customer that just entered the store. I was currently in a magic item store explicitly made for adventurers as standard metal gear wouldn't do anything against a monster's attack. Just like what I learned in my magic theory class, the dungeons contain the mana that the monsters use to feed their skills, so any type of gear that is not infused with mana will be blown to bits. Let's see. I muttered before selecting a few accessories which were infused with mana. They all gave me a resistance to toxic attacks as well, so at least I won't die from the toxic air lingering in the dungeon. I then paid for all the gear that sapped more than half of my money, leaving me almost completely broke. I already had some rations and pouches of water from my previous trips into the tortoise dungeon, so I didn't have to buy any more. Quickly, I made my towards the dungeon, which was not that far from the tortoise dungeon, but there were also noticeably fewer adventurers present. ID please, the guard requests, and I put out the ID, which I tampered with a bit. The ID I stole went all the way up to C.rank dungeons, so I wasn't going to have much trouble entering any new dungeons for now. Okay, please enter. I walked past him while gripping my spear, which returned to its normal form with only one blade. Reconstruction of a weapon wasn't as expensive as I thought, I muttered as I entered the dark cave. Most dungeons I had noticed were dark caves on the outside, and the higher rank they were, the larger the entrance was. You have entered the dungeon. Toxic Slime Cavern, recommended level 10. The notification appeared in front of me, and the farther I walked into the cave, the brighter the inside became as squishy orbs of green light were slowly lighting it. I poked a few with my spear, but they were surprisingly very resilient despite their flimsy appearance. I also noticed some green and black moss growing along the cave's walls, so I immediately slipped on my newly acquired accessories. The system resonates with the magic-infused equipment. You have unlocked a new part of the system. Equipment can now be used through the system. Oh, nice. Would you like to equip Toxic Barrier Ring? Would you like to equip Toxic Barrier Necklace? I had no reason to decline, so I immediately said, yes. Toxic Barrier Ring has been equipped, Toxic Barrier Necklace has been equipped. You can now view your equipment in your status. I decided to see what the system was talking about, and I wasn't disappointed. Status, name. Orion, race. Human, class. Spearsman, level 125th, 1/100, XP needed, HP, 35 35ths MP 10 10ths SP, 15 15ths. Normal human, strength 20. Normal human, defense 10. Normal human, magic 9. Normal human, speed 20. Normal human, skills. Tangible bloodlust, spear coating, equipment. Toxic Barrier Ring, Toxic Barrier Necklace, combined, Toxic Barrier Ring and Toxic Barrier Necklace gave me pretty much complete immunity to any weaker toxic attacks, even if they aren't direct. So, the moss which releases spores into the air won't affect me. But, the attacks of the slimes definitely would. And for some reason, my status didn't display the resistances. Maybe it's another part of the system. Squish, a squelching sound came from down the hall, and when I glanced at it, I noticed there was also some more green light after a sharp turn to the left. I cautiously walked towards the turn, and just as I swung around, I readied my spear in front of me while activating spear coating. Your love for the spear extends to your weapon. Squish, a green and black slime, and a massive cavern behind it. Black stalactites hung from the ceiling, and it looked as if they could fall down with just the slightest vibration. The entrance was on top of a hill that was littered with green and black ooze, but it also had a few signs of life. Trees with black leaves and bushes that had a mix of both colors. And finally, the last sign of life, a slime right before me. Squish, after I activated my skill, the slime noticed me, so it began to jump towards me at a pretty slow speed. The ground beneath it began to melt with each hop it took. It also smelled horrendous, like the most potent poison in the world. Shing, I split the slime in half before it melted into green and black water. And a tiny white sphere rolled towards me before splitting in half as well. Slimes are practically invincible monsters if you don't know their only weakness, their cores. They are small white spheres inside of them, which were pretty tough to cut if you didn't have the strength or speed for it. Now, shall we explore this place? I muttered before stepping onto the green and black hill. Chapter 27, Near-Death Experience. 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. They are small white spheres inside of them, which were pretty tough to cut if you didn't have the strength or speed for it. Now, shall we explore this place? I muttered before stepping onto the green and black hill. First, it was pretty dark because only the green squishy orbs scattered around with no pattern give off barely any light. It seemed like a lot in the rough hall, but it's practically useless when used in an extensive cavern like this. Next, the stench was horrible, like rotting flesh that was melted down by the most powerful in the world. Ugh, I groaned as I suppressed the urge to throw up. I should have bought some nose plugs. As I made my way down the hill, I ran into a few slimes that I killed before they could even do anything. But, it seems I was being trailed by even more because as soon as I looked around to find more slimes, I saw an enormous horde behind me. The horde was made up of about 20 slimes, and they all immediately spit a green goo at me, which I just barely dodged. The residual splash melted my clothes and irritated my skin. The pain wasn't that bad, but I knew if that stuff hit my face directly, it'd most likely melt my face straight off. Squish 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 squish. As if they had already realized that their attacks weren't going to work at such a distance, they all fused together into 10 slimes, cutting the number in half. But this time, they were much more threatening as with each hop, a small crater was left due to their toxic nature. Ahahaha. Yeah, no, I muttered before turning the opposite way and running straight down the hill towards a massive green lake. Bubbles erupted from the surface of the lake, revealing another batch of smaller slimes that hadn't fused yet. I took a sharp turn by slamming my foot into the mushy soil and dove out of the way of the spit goo. I glanced back to see what might have become of me if I was actually hit, but the problem was, I would have become absolutely nothing. As a massive crater was left. A drop of sweat ran down my cheek as I made a mad dash towards the only few trees in the massive cavern. The slimes from before had gathered into one massive group, which were now combining 3 into 1, leaving even bigger craters with each hop they took. What the hell? This isn't what I saw online, I muttered before placing my back against a large black trunk while seeing the massive balls of green and black goo get flung past me. Once again, I was in the splash zone, so it began to melt even more of my clothes. Squish 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 squish. The slimes were gradually growing closer, but using these few seconds of a slight break, I managed to formulate a plan that I was quite confident in but could see some holes that could potentially kill me. But it's better than nothing, I muttered while feeling sweat completely coat my back. What remained of my shirt was now completely drenched in sweat, causing my movement to feel a bit heavier than before. My pants were fine, but my shirt was probably hindering me more than helping me, so I quickly removed it before tossing it to the right of the tree. Squish. I then went the opposite direction of the shirt, sliding left and then quickly recovering with a roll that let me stand up and continue running. I glanced back to get a good idea of what I could use and noticed the first step of my plan had worked. Distract the slimes. They all went to the right of the tree, allowing me to make a clean escape towards the top of the hill. Squish squish. Even more slimes appeared before me, but thankfully, there were only 2, so I wrapped my spear in bloodlust and created another blade next to the real metal one. Shing. I cut both of them in half before diving into the hallway that I used to get into this massive cavern. Second step. Get to the hallway was now complete. Third step. Well, don't die. Now, all I had to do was somehow tear down the insane number of slimes that were quickly approaching the entrance. I counted how many there were, but that was useless as they were all slowly fusing, so I decided to try and count the cores visible within the slime. Thankfully the slimes weren't white or gray, otherwise, I'd have a much harder time trying to find them. Okay, about 45 cores. That means the cores didn't combine, but just the slimes. Okay, I can do this. I jumped up and down, feeling the adrenaline rush through my veins as I twirled my spear above me. I decided deactivating tangible bloodlust was the best idea as I needed to conserve as much stamina and mana possible. Tangible bloodlust takes too much mana and stamina out of me, so that was a no-go. Shing. I sliced upwards, feeling the blade getting pressed down by gravity. I sliced one core, but the singular slime blob continued to squish its way into the hallway. They had all combined into one slime that had utterly locked onto me. Even though it had no eyes, I could feel multiple lines of sight crawling along my body, causing chills to erupt from my skin. I sliced up again after jumping back once more. I cut two this time, but the slime was much faster than I had anticipated, especially when its entire body had taken the shape of the hallway. Hey! Do you need any help? But just as I began to get a bit nervous, the sweet sound of a human rang in my ears. Yeah. I shout back as I see a man clad in chainmail armor with a black sword rush towards me. What the hell is that thing? He shouts as he quickly approaches me. He doesn't seem that strong. And he doesn't know what happened to these slimes either. So I don't know. I've never heard or seen of this before. I shouted back, and just as he was about to pass me, I spun around, building up enough momentum to swing my spear into his shin. I then slid the blade out as I passed him, watching him fall to the ground in horror. He glanced up at the slime before seeing itself open up into something like that of a mouth before devouring the man whole. He was stuck in the green and black slime for a bit, but after a few seconds, he began to scream in agony as his flesh was being burned off his own body. The goo entered his mouth, burning him from the inside out as well. Soon he was reduced to nothing, but thankfully, the slime was immobile while digesting the man, so I was able to slash 7 cores before backing up. That was good. He probably would have gotten in the way towards the end due to his bulky armor and massive sword. Squish, now, what should I do? I muttered as another drop of sweat ran down my cheek. Squish. Chapter 28 Near-Death Experience, 3, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Squish, now, what should I do now? I muttered as another drop of sweat ran down my cheek. Squish 40.5 minus 8 is 30.7, but about 30.5 if I count the previous cores. And judging from how far the exit of this dungeon is, I won't be able to escape before it catches up to me. But, I have also noticed that it isn't shooting any balls of goo, which is heavenly for me. So, the only way is forward, right? The uncontrollable lust for blood that resides deep within you has taken form, the bloodlust has coated your spear and submits to your will, that I created 2 more blades on my spear, creating something akin to a trident as I twirled the spear over my head, building enough momentum to slash through the tough slime. I noticed earlier, when I was slashing the cores on the surface of the blob, that the slime's density had increased by at least 3-fold, meaning if I wanted to get the ones deeper in, I needed more power. I sliced through 2 cores before backing up, but suddenly, a large tendril burst out from the blob, hooking around my ankle, burning the shoes I was wearing. Thankfully, I just managed to slip my shoe out, but my ankle felt like it was on fire now, and when I looked down, I noticed most of the skin had been burned off. There wasn't much bleeding, but the pain was excruciating. Ugh, I groaned before stumbling back, causing the blob to burst forward. But, I used it as bait as I then swung forward, using the momentum of the slimes dashing towards me to slice the few cores at the very back of the blob. Squish, my hand was sacrificed as most of the skin had been burned off. It even revealed a bit of bone that would have made any average person nauseous, but I guess I was a bit normal as well, as I threw up as I reeled my hand out of the blob. Was it due to the pain or sight? I don't know. I noticed my spear was completely unaffected as it had been wrapped in tangible bloodlust and spear coating, but now that I lost my dominant hand, I now had to get the other cores somehow. And there are still a shit ton, I muttered as I wiped a bit of saliva from my mouth. The adrenaline rushing through my body made the pain a bit more bearable, but upon looking at my wounds, I could feel almost all the pain. I quickly jumped back before noticing a glowing squishy orb beside me. I'm so dumb. The slime was a bit distracted with digesting my skin and flesh, so I used this time to grab the glowing squishy orb and throw it into the slime. But suddenly, a green tendril exploded from the slime, piercing the glowing orb, causing strange green, luminescent juice to flow from it. I guess it wouldn't have made a difference, I worriedly chuckled to myself before creating even more space. Come on. Think. Think. The slime began to approach me quickly, and the exit was still so far away, so I decided to just grip the spear in my left hand and swing it awkwardly at the core deep in the slime. It managed to tear through one core, but it was stopped completely. And before I could take the spear out, a green tendril once again exploded from the blob monster, wrapping around my left hand this time. I ripped my hand out of its grasp, causing me to lose my spear inside the slime, but at least I wasn't dead, yet. I continued to hop back as I began to rack my brain back on previous memories, thinking of anything that I could possibly do. And suddenly, four massive tendrils were shot towards me, causing my world to slow down as death slowly but surely approached me. But, as if my brain was a puzzle, a piece suddenly clicked into place, and I remembered a few words that were spoken by the employee back in the magic item shop. They're not as cheap as some other magical equipment though, as processing the mold into the items is very taxing. I smiled as a plan formulated in my mind, combining bits of information that I had previously learned. I spun my body around just as I was about to get sucked into the massive green blob, and I grabbed a large chunk of mold off the stone wall. The mold was wet, so it almost slipped out of my hands, but I managed to just hold onto it as I was dragged into the slime. There were a few seconds of peace before I could feel the toxic slime quickly erode my flesh. I opened my mouth, feeling some of the slime flow down my throat as I began to chomp on the large chunk of mold. I couldn't even taste it as my tongue had been completely melted, and just as I lost my teeth and lips, I swallowed the mold, feeling the searing pain of the goo slide down my throat. You have swallowed toxic mold. An incredible amount of toxins rushes through your bloodstream. The panels that appeared before me caused me to feel a wave of despair as all I had done was speed up my death, but I wasn't done yet. I wasn't so stupid as to not know how toxins work. The treatment or cure for most poisons are created through other poisons, but what if that cure was already prepared? I swallowed my ring with the help of the goo as it began to erode my throat. You have attempted to digest the magic equipment. Toxic ring, unable to digest due to it having a large quantity of mana, toxic slime has now begun to break down the magic equipment. Toxic ring, unable to digest due to it having a large quantity of mana, toxic slime has now begun to break down the magic equipment. Toxic ring, you have successfully digested the magic equipment. Toxic ring, you have acquired the skill. Weak toxic immunity. Error, skill level has increased due to a large amount of mana being digested, you have acquired the passive skill. Toxic immunity, the toxins eroding your body begins to rebuild you, you have acquired the passive skill. Toxic body, a few unexpected factors made my situation better, but I didn't have time to relax. My eyes had been rebuilt. My nose had been rebuilt. My face had been completely rebuilt. But then it began to erode again. But I didn't panic as I reached towards my bag, which wasn't there anymore, but the only thing left was a small vial of red liquid. I paused. Then resumed before grabbing it and chugging it down my rebuilt esophagus. Gasp star dot. I gasped for air as soon as my entire body had been rebuilt, and the toxic body of the slime no longer corroded my body. But, I began to swallow a large amount of the slime again, so I quickly reached for the white orbs before activating tangible bloodlust. Your lust for blood coats your hands, I cried out as the orb began to crack. Veins were popping out of my forehead as I squeezed even harder, and then, crack, the orb burst. Chapter 29 Sniper Rifle 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I cried out as the orb began to crack. Veins were popping out of my forehead as I squeezed even harder, and then, crack, the orb burst. But, I didn't have time to celebrate as I continued down the scattered line of orbs while the slime could do absolutely nothing but await its impending doom. Crack, 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 crack. I was becoming more proficient in breaking the orbs with my hands. Crack, 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 crack. I didn't even glance at my dwindling mana as I continued, almost in a trance for survival. Crack 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 crack. I repeated the process a few more times until, gasp star. Huff 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 huff, I gasped for air while on my hands and knees, feeling the slime around me slowly drip down onto the rocky floor. You have leveled up, you have leveled up, you have leveled up. Upon catching my breath, I turn over onto my back and glance at the empty glass vial which had saved me. Thank you, I muttered, hugging the vial against my chest before checking my body for any wounds. Initially, I was going to drink the vial upon swallowing the ring, but everything had melted too fast, but I still managed to survive somehow. I knew it was possible to gain skills like this, but it was extremely deadly and challenging, so I never tried any of it. And suddenly, a new notification popped up in front of me. You have completed the hidden quest. Acquire a skill through items, reward has been granted, hidden reward has been granted. A familiar leather book appeared in my hands, getting soaked in the green slime but not eroding, unlike everything else. Also, the vial I had placed on my chest was refilled with a golden liquid, and a new cork held it in. Size star. I wish there were a way I could see what these things are. I muttered before standing up and wiping off any excess slime from my body. My clothes had been completely melted, leaving me stark naked in this dungeon. But to make matters even worse, somebody entered the dungeon and saw me standing in the middle of a pile of green slime, holding a book and a vial of golden liquid. I can explain. Thankfully, the man was kind enough to inform me that I should bring multiple pairs of clothes and armor the next time I came to this dungeon, as all the toxic-resistant armor and clothes were expensive. And after that, he gave me some clothes and drove me back to school, where I quickly ran through the dorm, hoping nobody would see me. Slam, foo. Safe, I muttered before hopping into the shower and staring into the mirror placed against the tiled wall. I noticed every blemish on my face from puberty was gone entirely, and my skin was as smooth as a baby. After the shower, I changed into some more casual clothes as my next class was gun theory, which doesn't require any physical activity. I also opened up the backpack the man had given me and took out both the book and the vial filled with a golden liquid. First, I raised the vial to my face before muttering, "It kind of looks like piss." I then popped open the cork before smelling it and thankfully didn't regret it, as it smelt precisely like peaches. I then chugged the entire vial while smelling its sweet aroma. 5 points have been added to your mana pool. Oh, nice. I then opened up the book, which was a bit thinner than the previous ones, and began to read it. Strangely, it had no chapters or titles, but I didn't have time to care about it as the pages quickly captured me. You have acquired the passive skill. Night vision. Ugh. That's pretty good. This skill would be helpful for my sniper rather than my spear, for which I was only getting skills for. After trying to test out my new passive skill, I decided to leave it for later as switching off the light in my room did absolutely nothing. Everything was still dark. Status, name. Orion, race. Human, class. Spearsman, level. For 25ths, 32/100, XP needed, HP, 35 35ths MP 15 15ths SP, 15 15ths. Normal human, strength. 20. Normal human, defense. 10. Normal human, magic. 14. Normal human, speed. 20. Normal human, skills. Tangible bloodlust, spear coating, passive skills. Toxic immunity, toxic body, night vision, equipment. Toxic barrier necklace. I checked my status on my way to the gun theory classroom as the bell just rang as soon as I finished reading the skill book. My status wasn't looking too bad now. But, I forgot one crucial thing. Oh wait, I didn't have lunch, I muttered upon arriving at the front of the classroom. The adrenaline had finally washed out of my body and what it left me with was an unpleasant present that I had never asked for. My stomach grumbled as I entered the classroom and picked up the same sniper from yesterday. The bell for the end of the transition period rang, so the teacher gathered us towards the middle of the classroom. Alright, yesterday we learned a lot about our guns, such as how to disassemble them, but today, we're going to be actually learning how to use them, Mr. G spoke up as everybody created a circle around him. Suddenly, a few white and red circle targets appeared at the end of the room. Mr. G. I thought you said we'd learn how to use our guns in tandem with our other weapons. A boy spoke up with a question everybody had. Ah, that was my bad. I actually forgot I had to teach you boys and girls how to use your guns. So, line up with your respective weapons, and I'll come by to teach all of you how to use them. Also, don't clown around with your guns when I'm not there, and make sure to keep the safety on, Mr. G says as we all gather into our groups, a few meters away from the targets. We were actually the first ones to be taught, so my excitement wasn't edged as he took one of the snipers from a girl in our group. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, bam. Ding. After muttering a few words, he raised the sniper to his shoulder, placed it against it, looked into the scope, and then fired, hitting the very edge of the target. I'm not that great with snipers, but I do know a lot about them. Like, I have really shaky hands, and as you can see, my concentration isn't the best, but you'll have to bear with it for now, he finishes his sentence before flipping the sniper around and switching the safety back on. It seems she accidentally flipped off the safety, somehow. Chapter 30 Sniper Rifle, 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. I'm not that great with snipers, but I do know a lot about them. Like, I have really shaky hands, and as you can see, my concentration isn't the best, but you'll have to bear with it for now, he finishes his sentence before flipping the sniper around and switching the safety back on. It seems she accidentally flipped off the safety, somehow. So I'm sure most of you want to stay out of direct combat, which is why you picked the sniper rifle. So, you'll either be in a prone position or the sniper is set up on a wall. He says before flipping the sniper back around and laying his stomach on the ground. Everybody watched intently, even the pistol group, which was only a few meters away from us. This is a prone position where you still keep your hands on the rifle, but you're minimizing your surface area in order to avoid the line of sight of an enemy. He then flips off the safety and explains the proper form that we all mentally took note of. After explaining the proper form, he placed his cheek against the stock, closed his left eye, adjusted the position a bit, and fired. Bam! Ding. This time, he hit closer to the center than before. All of you, try it out with your rifles and never point the barrel at somebody, even if it is as a joke. If I ever catch you doing it, I'll have you suspended for a month. I mean, I knew it was serious, but I didn't expect it to be that serious. After a few minutes, it was finally my turn to try the sniper out for the first time. I initially picked it out since it would be a perfect match for my intelligence, but I also had an outstanding concentration, plus, my hands aren't that shaky. Well. Guess we'll find out, I muttered before taking a prone position and setting the stand up. I then shuffled my body a bit forward, placed my cheek against the stock, closed my left eye so I could focus all my attention through the scope, and then. Pew! The suppressor on my rifle made it sound more like a pistol rather than an actual sniper rifle, but what I didn't expect was that the sound was much quieter than I had anticipated. It might not even be as loud as a regular pistol. It may be on the level of suppressed pistols. But, I didn't hit the target anyway, so I should focus on fixing my aim rather than worrying about the sound level. Mr. G. One of the kids behind me shouts as I stand up. Yes. He shouts back as he is at the shotgun group, which was farther away. Are they seriously learning how to use a shotgun with a target that far? And as if the gods wanted to fuck with me, the target suddenly dipped under the ground and then reappeared much closer than any other target. PSH, how much higher should we aim due to bullet drop? The boy asks as I line up behind him. There is no fucking bullet drop. Do you see how close you are to the target? If you can't hit the target, that just means you're shit. The teacher shouts back in anger as it seems the shotgun group pissed him off. We also didn't have to calculate the wind as we were in an enclosed room. Well damn, I muttered as everybody else in the sniper group chuckled to themselves. The boys' cheeks flushed red before one girl stepped up to have her first fire with the sniper, or so I thought. Bam! Ding, bullseye! Straight bullseye! It was the same girl from before who had accidentally flipped off the safety, which, now that I think about it more, is pretty impossible. So as everybody gawked at her while she walked to the back of the line, I asked her something. "Why'd you flip off the safety?" "I don't know what you're talking about," she responds, not even glancing at me. She had short, light blue hair but creepy pale gray pupils that I hadn't even seen blink once. She was above average in terms of looks with her clear white skin, but she wasn't anything on a celebrity level like most girls in this school. Asterisk sniff star. Sniff, apparently, she also has allergies. "Yo, you got a tissue?" she asks. "I'll give you one if you answer my question. I told you I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do, ... Sniff. "Fine. I was just really excited to feel a new sniper. I've only used a few old military ones my grandpa let me shoot." Sniff. It seems she isn't lying. "Well, fine," I respond before turning around. "Hey, what about the tissues?" "Don't got any, wah." "So, you just scammed me." "Sure, geez." Sniff. Sniff. Her sniffling was a bit annoying, but I didn't have to deal with it any longer as we soon moved on to some other practices with our guns. And after those practices, we took a break, so I thought the class was about to end, but to everybody's horror, we were forced to do cardio. "Alright, 5 laps around the edge of the room. If you start walking, I'll have you add another lap. If you finish last, you'll have to do another lap as well," and with an evil smile, he clasped his hands together before we started jogging. Physical movements under zero pressure was heavenly as my stamina was actually really good, but it quickly drains under pressure, but one person was definitely struggling the most. I had already lapped her once and was about to lap her twice to finish my jog. "Yo, you struggling there?" I asked the girl with light blue hair and pale gray eyes. Asterisk sniff star. Huff huff. Nah. Huff huff. "It's my allergies," she responded with a bit of confidence, but when you glanced at her face, you could see her exhausted expression. Her cheeks had collapsed into her face, and there were dark bags slowly forming under her eyes. Huff huff. "Why the hell would a sniper even need to run?" Sniff. Huff huff, she mutters as she desperately claws at the air as if she was trying to find something to pull herself forward. I chuckled at her silly movements. "She's pretty funny. What's your name?" Asterisk sniff star. "Isa." "What about you?" Sniff. "Orion." "Cool. Now go away." Sniff. "I need to concentrate." "Sure." I chuckled a bit before finishing my 4 laps.